Welcome back to the show. We're talking about venture capital beyond cowboys and not just vulture capitalists. We're talking about the real economy. This is really where capital flows into great businesses, great ideas, and great sectors as well. Tech being one of them. Tanya, if you look through the survey, tech has traditionally been the strong sector when it comes to VC. Does that follow in the South African context as well? Where are you seeing some interesting fund flows in terms of sectors?
So what we've seen is the food and beverage sector received the most investments in terms of value of investments. But if you look at the tech sector and if you group software, business products and services, fintech, and technology-based investments, it's over 56% of the investments flow into tech kind of businesses. So although we're seeing a broad range of sectors receiving support, it does seem to be concentrated 50 to 60% in the tech space.
And with that, Stephan, I did pick up agri-tech is starting to show a notable uptick as well.
Well, look, there's one operator in Cape Town that's made international fame with their technology. It's in the public domain and focusing on drone technology in the agriculture sector. And they've received quite a number of investment, not just from one operator, but from many of the VC funds that's gotten into that transaction. So that's quite big. And I think that's exciting for South Africa because agriculture is a huge thing in our country. It's a huge driver of economic activity. I think at the moment it's the fastest resounding or the sector that is the fastest recovering following COVID. So it makes sense that we need to see a lot more investment in tech for agriculture, same as what you mentioned Israel earlier on. We're seeing that already in the financial services sector with the amount of investment that's going into fintech kind of transactions. So it's to be expected, and I really hope to see more of that in the future. It's good for the economy.
Really good for the economy. And Andrea, given that the survey of yesteryear, I should say, because it was a 2019 survey, showed record growth, and given all of the dire predictions around COVID, what are your predictions for 2020? What do you expect the 2020 survey to reveal?
I expect 2020 to actually be not too bad. I mean, absolutely COVID has impacted us, but what COVID has really impacted is, I think, speed. So people are doing transactions. Absolutely. It just takes a little bit longer. I think we were all a little bit disrupted for about 2 months to kind of go and find our feet and focus a little bit more on our existing portfolio companies. But all over, I just see transactions happening. So I think 2020 will actually be a good year. I think the nature of transactions might have slightly kind of changed. Absolutely. Investors needed to kind of go and look at business models, need to look at what are they going to invest in. And to be honest, the process of investing was impacted because normally you're going to go and sit around the table, you negotiate, you go and do your due diligence by actually meeting with the entrepreneurs. And that's something, of course, we couldn't do. So as I said, that, of course, then impacted how long it actually takes to do a transaction. So we are doing transactions, and yes, they've all taken about 2 months longer than they would normally take. Absolutely. But I actually expect 2020 to be a good year.
And that's sort of counter to some of the narrative that you hear on the street, Stephan. The fact is that deal-making continues, business continues. Everyone thought that the world just went into cryogenic stasis over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I think that also speaks to the heart of venture capital and why that is a good economic instrument. If you just consider the way that venture capital works and where fund is being raised for deployment later on, most of the people that we engage with this year, they were not affected by COVID in the sense of the money that needs to be spent because that money was already raised before COVID. In future years, one will have to see what the impact will be on fundraising going forward. But most of the people sat in a situation where they're saying, well, we've got this money. If we don't spend this money, we're going to have to return it to our investors or we're not going to get our fees. So let's be innovative. Let's go and really do the hard work in terms of getting the money deployed. And absolutely, I mean, that is what we need to see. We need to get money to the people that need the money, either being the entrepreneurs or the people that need to create those jobs. But that is critical.
Tanya, what are your thoughts for 2020? Probably still early days to give a firm prediction, but would you say that things might surprise on the upside?
I think we'll see good deal activity, but we won't see the record deal activity that we've seen the last 2 years. As Andrea said, a lot of the VC fund managers or the investors, the first 2 or 3 months after COVID hit South African shores, was about triage and about supporting the existing portfolio and portfolio companies and reevaluating those business models to make sure that they survive post-COVID and that they're financially strong. But we have seen that those that have funds, as Stephan said, are still investing. So we're still seeing good deals happening. We're seeing that there's both local and international investors conducting deals not only in South Africa but also on the African continent. So there's a lot of VC activity happening on the African continent itself and not just in South Africa.
And another interesting trend from COVID, Andrea, was the fact that it accelerated this digital transformation. And given that that's really where VC finds its sweet spot, is the asset class now perhaps slightly less risky as a result of COVID?
So I definitely don't think that it's more risky. I mean, absolutely. I think what it shows, I mean, venture capital is there to go and catalyze innovation, catalyze disruptive kind of technology. And I think if one thing COVID has done is that it disrupted a lot of things. So now, for those entrepreneurs who actually have solutions for this, they needed money. If venture capital can kind of go and fund this, and I think it actually proves the case for venture capital. It really shows that if a new opportunity comes up, and with disruption, that's what happens. New opportunities come up. For those entrepreneurs who have a solid kind of valuable position to kind of go and fill this void and actually kind of go and do something, I mean, the money is there, and that's what has been supported. So I actually think it has proven why venture capital is needed and that it actually works. So for me, it has nothing to do with, is it more risky? It's actually, it just shows that when disruption comes, when innovation is required, venture capital is just one of those asset classes to support this. And I think that's what we've done.
Stephan, on that point, it really was a question around whether the asset class might now be viewed more favorably just because it plays in this arena of the digital transformation. Do you think it makes it a slightly easier sell to go out there and raise funds and say, right, this is where we're investing, and we're investing in this new economy?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't necessarily ascribe that as a result of COVID. I think if you look at the numbers over the last 5 years, more and more people coming into the sector. If you take 12J, you know, there's the money that's come in, but there's also an enormous amount of people that's gotten into VC that weren't previously seeing themselves as venture capitalists. The more people are involved, the easier it is to learn from each other, the easier it is to find which business models work, which don't work. If you have to do fundraising, which sources should you approach, which shouldn't you approach? And that is the kind of ecosystem that we all talk about that is starting to gain momentum and start making it easier to do business. And I think that it's a big ship. It's taken probably the better part of 10 years to really try and create that kind of direction. But I think that momentum is there, and that's going to continue. And I would say, not seeing this as a challenge to anybody or anything, but I don't see that momentum changing. I see that momentum has picked up regardless of poor economic climate, regardless of poor economic policy, regardless of the fact that there's still no institutional investment. So despite all those negative factors, we just keep seeing positives. And that momentum, to me, speaks about something that relates to the fact that I think we've been a little bit behind the curve in terms of investing in entrepreneurs in our country. And the backlog of doing that is so big that we need to increase and increase and increase and see increased activity before we'll ever get to the opportunity of really satisfying the need that is out there for new products and services. So I cannot see anything but positive looking forward in terms of investment activity.
On the issue, and where are the institutional investors is the broad question, but we do see the SA SME fund that's entered into the ecosystem just of late. Andrea, do you see it just as a matter of time before big institutions really start coming into the VC world in a meaningful way in South Africa?
I think the SSME fund has done a tremendous job by catalyzing existing and new fund managers. And with this, actually, hopefully encouraging more institutional investors to kind of go and follow. So the point is that while we have, of course, funds here in South Africa, the funds are too small. So we can't actually kind of go and do too many kind of meaningful deals. And for first-time fund managers, it is so extremely difficult to kind of go and get the first money. And that's where the SASME fund has really kind of come to the table. They really have going to go and done a lot to kind of go and catalyze the industry and help fund managers to really go and do this. Now, of course, it's up to the fund managers to prove that we can deploy the money and get the returns. So it's now over to us. But you know what? You need to be given the chance. You need to be given the opportunity. We now have this. We need to kind of go and do this, and hopefully the results will then finally kind of go and convince the traditional institutional investors to kind of go and follow suit and actually invest in the asset class.
Andrea, I want to stay with you for a second longer and just talk about your fundraising efforts. Is the narrative around South Africa and the politics making it more difficult to raise funds?
I wish I could say no, but I can't. Absolutely. So the big problem is because the traditional institutional investors in South Africa are not really supporting the VC asset class, we need to go overseas to go and raise money. And the moment you try to go and raise and try to speak to international investors overseas about South Africa, there is a lot of eagerness. They actually want to, particularly those who've been to South Africa are quite keen to kind of go and they see it, but they simply say, unfortunately, if you look at political risk and if you look at the economic risk now, it is very, very difficult to convince their investment managers to kind of go and say, we are allocating money into South Africa. So the narrative is actually at the moment not good. I mean, we've had a number of, so we are currently raising a fund, and we are speaking to a number of international investors who in principle saying we tick every box. The only box that we not tick is the South Africa box. Is the political kind of risk box. And to be honest, it is really about us as an asset class coming together and making sure that the narrative kind of works. And surveys like this one now, of course, is something that really helps us, because now we can actually kind of go and tell them, look at the growth, look at the potential, the exits are there. That's what we desperately need. But yeah, it's not easy at the moment. No, the narrative is unfortunately at the moment counting a bit against us.
That was a fascinating panel with Stephan Lamprecht, MD of Venture Solutions, Tanya van Lill, CEO of SAVCA, and Andrea Böhmert, co-managing partner of Knife Capital. It's all about hope for the future of VC. Sometimes, though, in South Africa, it's the hope that kills you.